D-Day.
D-Day. So before we get into D-Day, tell us about this.
Okay, so this is probably very illegal, but this is
You got it.
this is a 40 millimeter shell casing, and 40 millimeters are anti-aircraft weaponry aboard a ship. They fire pretty fast, and how Bud snuck this off in his sea bag is just, like the map we'll get to in a minute. But my dad told me an interesting thing when he gave me this to store my stuff in, which it's now, whatever, it's 68 years later, and I keep stuff in here.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
These guns were the mid-size armament on a destroyer. The 5-inch guns were, Bud served as a spotter. He was actually in the 5-inch mounts when the ship was hit. The 5-inch mounts could fire a shell like 5 miles, but they were fast enough to shoot at kamikazes and planes coming in. When they got closer, like within 2 miles, these guns opened up, and they were way faster, and they could be controlled, but didn't have the range. And Bud said, when you hear the 40 millimeters go out, you know that plane is close, but when you hear the 20 millimeters go off, get ready, you're gonna get hit.
You're gonna get hit.
His particular ship, if we can look at this, or one of that other picture.
This one?
Yeah, let's look at this just a quick second. These in front are twin-mounted 5-inch guns, and Bud, I believe, was in that one, this number 1 mount with 2 5-inch mounts, 2 5-inch guns. He was in that one when the ship was hit. It's a story that Don and I'll tell you when we get to it. And there was one in the back. And then the 40 millimeters you can see are in these casings spread around the ship, but they're protected. And then the 20 millimeters are really small. They're really for inside shooting. And when you hear them go off, something's really close. Something's really close. So Bud brought home this 40 millimeter shell, and and that's, understand, we lived in before Don and I graduated high school, I think we lived in 4 different states and 10 different towns.
Well, you guys went to South River High School,
Yeah,
right?
finally.
Yeah.
I mean, Don actually started Manasquan High School.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
we have
So
had
it's
that.
traveled around.
It has
Everywhere.
traveled from the Pacific to here.
That's amazing.
Yes,
That is
but that's what
amazing.
that shell casing is from.
That is just, and this is another picture of the ship.
Yeah, again, I think this is early configuration of the walk. And here, I don't know how clear it is on the video camera, but the radio shack was back in here someplace behind combat information, behind the bridge. It was this mount and the bridge that was hit by a Japanese Zero that had a bomb in it during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which we'll jump to or get to in
Yeah,
one.
let's talk about it, absolutely. Is that part in what happened?
I don't know if that's in the journal or not.
It's really interesting because this has got to be probably the most traumatic thing that he experienced. And all he writes is, hit by a suicide plane about 12:01, about 45 killed and wounded. I'm okay except under constant attack for 4 days with 7th Fleet. Returned from the Lingayen Gulf to Leyte.
Lingayen. Yeah, we gotta be ready.
With O'Brien, Sumner, and
Laffey?
Convoy.
Oh, those are other destroyers, like the O'Brien. Actually, this is a Sumner class destroyer.
Okay,
So they were all fast.
yeah.
They all had guns sticking out of everywhere.
Yeah, and he didn't really talk about the damage, but in the interview that he did for Kutztown University, he does explain where he was when the ship was attacked.
Which is really, really, really wonderful, because there's video that we do have of Bud, and he's talking, and
Right.
he will talk about his experiences as well. So thank God
They
we
were-
have
yeah.
that. That's so
Right.
beautiful. It really is.
It's pretty emotional to listen to him talk about.
Right. I don't think he talked about it immediately after the war because it's devastating. But he did talk about it to us as we grew up. And as he's on duty that day, they're on picket out away from the aircraft carriers and the battleships in the Pacific, right? This is after D-Day, it's after Cherbourg. They sailed directly to Iwo Jima and lined it up for the island hopping that MacArthur was doing. And sometime in January, so he just turned 20, he turned 20 in November, and the first week in January, they're out on picket duty, and the Japanese launch wave after wave of kamikazes to get at our carriers. But they can't because the destroyers that are out there are shooting them down. So they have to come after the destroyers. And Bud's ship, the official report says that Bud's ship was attacked by 4 or 5 kamikazes individually, and they shot down the first 2. And the third one gets through, hits the ship in the bridge where the captain and all the officers and the command force is. I think it spilled gas all over the front of the ship. The bomb came off the bottom of the Japanese Oscar and went into the Combat Information Center just behind the bridge, and the gunnery all went out. Like everything was fried. Electronics, rudimentary radar, everything's like out. So Bud tells us, he comes up out of his 5-inch mount, and it's just on flames. And he goes, "We didn't think, we just did." And we, meaning him and his other gunner's mates, climb up over the bridge in the front, step into the bridge where it's chaos, there's bodies all over the place, like Donna said, 45 are injured. And there's a chief there, in the middle of all the smoke and fire, and he goes, "Heilman, Smith, get the stretcher." And he goes, "We didn't think." We grabbed the stretcher, we started putting bodies on, and we took them down to the sick bay. And the captain, George Davis, refused to go down until every single other man in the crew had gone down to the sick bay and been treated and taken care of. And by the time, and I don't know if Dad carried Captain Davis down in the stretcher. I don't know if he was one of the ones that took him down. But by the time Davis got down, he was dead. And he ended up receiving the Medal of Honor, and obviously posthumously, he received the Medal of Honor, and a destroyer, I believe an Arleigh Burke class destroyer, but I'm not positive on that, is named after George Davis.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
right.
And Dad would never kind of go into the details beyond that. Can only leave it to your imagination. Is what was that scene when he and the other gunner's mates stepped into that bridge. And Davis is still directing the ship and making sure that manually he can fire on the other kamikazes, and they shoot down like 2 or 3 more.
Yeah.
This was the Battle of Okinawa.
It's not.
No,
It was
it's
not. It was, we were invading the Philippines, and Donna can look this up. It's after Lingayen. I think it's Leyte, Leyte.
Yeah, Leyte.
Or Omrak Bay, because he was at all those.
Yeah.
But I think the ship was hit in Leyte. They couldn't fix the walk in Ulithi. They couldn't fix her at Pearl Harbor. They sent her back to Seattle.
Yeah.
They put on new superstructure and sent right back to get into, the latter stages of the Pacific War, including Okinawa, and on to the surrender at Tokyo.
Yeah. He said in the video, he says that I don't know the officer in charge, but when the plane hit, whoever that officer was screaming at my dad and all the other guys, "Get out, get out, get out, get out of that turret, get out." And they did, and that's when then he went forward and had to, man the stretchers. But yeah, it's interesting that he doesn't really say anything.
Any of that in there, right?
He explains then where they went. They went to Man's Island, with the Louisville and the Columbia, stayed a few days, and they
Two
went to Pearl
cruisers.
Harbor. They stayed 10 days. It's 10 days to get to Pearl Harbor, stayed for 1 day, left for the States, arrived in San Francisco early morning of February 7th, right, and then left the next day because he was granted leave. All right, he gets to Dayton, Ohio, he's grounded, right, because of the weather.
Oh,
He
no.
leaves Dayton the night of the 9th by train and arrives in Harrisburg on Friday, and then he leaves Harrisburg by bus and he gets home to York. And I just think this is, how old is he? He's 20.
Right.
And he gets home and he gets off the bus and he he goes down to the Y. He visits people at the Y. He runs into his aunt and uncle, and some friends. He goes into the paper, but his father wasn't there. His father, works for
The
the
newspaper
York Dispatch.
Favorite, oh.
Yeah.
So then he says, I did not tell anyone I was coming home. I talked to Margie and Bill. Aunt Margie was my grandmother's sister, and he gave Bill a tom-tom.
What's that?
It's, like a little bongo that he
okay,
bought in
okay,
New Mexico.
okay.
He gives his uncle a tom-tom, right? And then he says, he stopped at the Y, saw Ike, Miss Cook, and throughout the journal, he gets a lot of letters from this Miss Cook who worked at the Y and just
Oh,
loved
that's
my
so
dad and
sweet. That
all
is
his
so
high school
sweet.
buddies. Stayed about an hour. Now, he hasn't been home in years, and he goes to the Y and he stays there for an hour, right? Then he walks up the hill. Found Mom there with Margie and Bill. Mom looks swell, but she cried a little. Man, it was great to be home. Changed to civilian pants and my Y sweater. Pop came in looking great. Went to the Y and had a shower. Got back home and the girls were there, his sisters. And then he just says we were together as a family. Now he's back with Riney. Riney and I went to a show Friday, went to Sunday school, and into church by myself. The 14 days went too damn fast. Everyone was swell to me. I got over the scared feeling for a while. That just really gets me. For a while anyway. Left Friday the 23rd for the coast. Deuce and I went by train, left Mare Island for Pearl Harbor with the Shubrick and the Alabama. And then, he goes on to say, what was happening next. And this was, before D-Day.
No.
Before Okinawa.
Before Okinawa.
So-
Because they sailed back from the West Coast.
We didn't really talk about his D-Day experience, which was really fascinating because a lot of people don't realize that the date was changed.
Yes, it was,
Because
yeah.
Dad said he actually went to sleep and he woke up and they were back in Plymouth. And it's because Eisenhower changed his mind because the weather was so bad.
The
And
weather,
Right.
yeah.
So
then they went out the next day.
The Walk's job for Normandy was to because their draft was only like 15 or 16 feet, and they could get real close to the beach. And so the destroyers rode in with the landing craft and tried to pick off the German batteries, that were up on the cliffs. And I think they were there for just a few days as the landing proceeded, because then they were sent to nearby Cherbourg, which is a large French port that the Americans wanted because they could do real shipping and debarkation. And so they took part in that, and I think that might have been like a 15-day battle or something, with, again, the destroyer able to get in close and exchange fire with the German defenses, but eventually the Americans took Cherbourg, and then they were able to bring in big, deep water, cargo vessels and tankers and transports, and they...
Does he talk about that in
Yeah.
Sedona?
It's interesting though, because his first liberty in England, he says the town is really shot to hell. There's hardly a single building that isn't gutted by fire or bomb racked. There's absolutely nothing to do. The place is crawling with servicemen, mostly American. Met Jim Tome from York. Sure was good to see him. Planned to meet next Thursday. Well, of course they didn't. The countryside is very beautiful and hilly, but the town is completely wrecked. So June 6th, they escorted the first wave to the coast of France. went on go at 8:30 Monday and stayed on till last night at 12 o'clock. Left for 2 hours and was called back because of an air attack. Nevada, Texas, British Monitor and Cruiser, Marblehead and Quincy started shore bombardment. The first wave hit the beach at 7:15. We remained in the transport area. The show last night was very exciting. They called it the show, what was going on. And then, our planes bombarded the coast and 13 were shot down. Eagle boats attacked but were driven off. From the dope we got, the first wave was pretty well chopped up. A lot of trouble the first day. We moved into within several yards of the beach, but did no firing. The show tonight was very good. Then June 7th, they moved in for the shore bombardment, fired the first salvo. Fire control parties on the beach gave us targets. We fired on and off, destroying German emplacements. Afternoon, German counterattacked, and we helped repel said attack. We fired 6 gun salvos. Dive bombing by our planes was watched from the ship. We had plenty of time to stand around and watch. So they're reinforcing. Then they got some tanks ashore. Also, they shot at us but missed. Either the Meredith or the Laffey was hit. Last night, the minesweepers did a hell of a good job. They were limey. The best of this show is the U.S. That's what he says.
The Laffey would go down in fame, I think, at Lady or Lingayen Golf. With the walk, they were there on Pickett, and the Laffey got hit by 5 kamikazes and didn't sink.
And did not sink.
Did not sink.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Laffey was also a Sumner-class destroyer and one of the most famous ships in U.S. naval history, because it just wouldn't go down. It just wouldn't go down.
It's amazing.
In the middle of all this, it just makes me laugh. Called back to GQ after 2 hours of sleep. Air attack, no damage. Stood circuit watch in Radio Shack. This morning took the first bath in 4 days. I need a shave. Then June 8th.
No, he's not 20 yet.
Yeah.
He's 19
That's
and
crazy.
plus, right? He's not even 20
So
yet.
they went back to Plymouth for ammunition. They loaded up, and one morning they crossed the channel last night with the Nevada and the Fitch. They arrived off the French coast. Time is no longer important. We go to general quarters every night and have regular watches at day. Air raids at night by Germans are pretty heavy. Have been bombed once since being back, but no damage. Meredith was beached at Plymouth. Then on the 15th of June, so all the time they've been there, got news that Japan was bombed by B-29. War seems to be going very well at the present moment. Hard fighting, however, here in France. Italy going well. And then he complains that he hasn't had any mail since he came.
Oh, I can understand that.
Yeah. And then June 23rd, accompanied by the forest, we escorted minesweepers up the coast all day. Nothing happened. And then on the 24th, they went as far as Cherbourg, was fired upon by the guns of Fort Livy, or Livy.
Yeah.
We took some shrapnel, but no one got hurt. Shots landed within 15 yards of the ship. We returned fire right away and poured out about 198 kids. We laid down a smoke screen and bagged ass.
I think that means they left as fast as they could. They ran out of ammo and then we're out of here.
We're out of here. Left for meeting with Battle Fleet, but new orders came and we are now in Portland. We were the first ship to bombard Cherbourg because the task force left without us. We were the only ship in our squadron not to be hit. Left Portsmouth and went to Weymouth, a very nice town, and pretty girls.
And here's another picture that we have.
Right, in their whites. That's in their dress whites.
In their dress whites.
That's in Okasuka, in Japan.
So that's at the surrender, the surrender of us.
Dad, right here.
Yeah, right in the middle without his hat on. All the other pictures have him with that hat and a cocky attitude. But that one, he's not wearing a hat.
Okay, and then you have one here too. This is a really nice shot of your dad in
Yeah.
his Navy uniform.
Yes.
that picture is actually only about 2.5 inches high, 3
Is
inches
it?
high,
Yeah,
in a little tiny
oval frame.
oval frame.
But you know
yeah.
what?
I love
The
it.
uniforms, it's hard because
Yeah.
the buttons on the sides we were talking about.
Yeah, the fly
And
has
you know,
13
From
buttons.
Here.
It's just amazing how narrow these men were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, right,
Look at this.
right.
Yeah,
Look
here.
at that. 13
With the
buttons, one for each
on
of
it?
the
Yeah.
original colonies, is that right?
I
1,
believe
2,
so.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
This is
11,
amazing.
12, 13, maybe it's 14. But
this is.
there's a lot of weight, there's a lot of buttons to unbutton when, you
Yeah.
know, when you have to take those
And how
off.
come here we have
Laced up the back.
Laced up the back.
Right.
Yeah. See that? There's laces and the bell bottoms.
Yep,
We got bell bottoms here, and this is similar to what. This isn't your dad's because we had this.
Yeah, 'cause
but this is something. And here's
it is what he wore.
It-
It
yeah.
is. We have this of
The
Dad's,
emblem.
and this is really cool because that's a radioman's.
I know, isn't it interesting?
And
This
on
is
my-
like so neat.
My dad's, you'll see in the picture here, he's got the chevron. He started as a radioman first class, and then, and I don't remember exactly when, he got here in the second chevron and was a radioman second class.
And then we also, this is really beautiful that you have your
Yeah.
dad's hat.
Right.
Can you show that?
Right. Is there a picture with him with this hat on?
I think we have.
I
it.
think
Yeah,
we do.
I think we do.
This
have
hat
it. There it is.
worn on the back of his head, Don.
Yeah.
You know?
That's
Yeah.
I
beautiful.
tried pulling over my head, and it's, but it's a beautiful wool hat, and that's his first,
Amazing they
peacoat.
have it. This
Yeah.
is so beautiful.
right, this survived the war.
I can't, it
This
looks like
survived,
it's brand new.
this
I
survived
know.
me wearing it to South River High School, my son Jeff wearing it to
Yep.
East Brunswick High School, and, Chrissy, can you hold?
Oh, yeah,
Mine
sure.
Just hold that
is
a
just
second, and we'll see if we can do this the right way.
Which, stuck in there?
Yeah, I put in so it didn't.
Okay,
Inside, see if we get this right.
okay. We have his name in there.
Inside is his name.
Oh, wow. Here it is, right here.
Right,
Oh,
now,
this is beautiful.
I used to have his
See that now?
serial number memorized, because you have to give your name, rank, and
Yeah,
serial
name,
number.
rank, and serial
And I
number.
used his serial number as a code.
You did?
Yeah. 8191303.
Yep. This is beautiful.
Right, it is beautiful. So
Yeah.
this
Sounds
was
like
Bud's,
a song.
this was Bud's, yeah, it does sound like a, so this is Bud's first. And as I told you, we also have his second, which he had custom tailored. But I gotta tell you, this fits like a glove.
This one, yeah,
Yeah.
if it's you.
Oh, yeah, it fits
Oh,
me.
this is
I'm about the same size as Bud was when he was in the Navy.
That's amazing. This is beautiful.
When I was in high school, my dad gave me his Navy sweater, which I cherished. I loved that sweater. My
have
senior
it?
class photo, I'm wearing that sweater. And I took it with me to college. And when I was a junior, I was working in the cafeteria. And I left it there one night, by accident, and I never saw it again.
Nah, you
Oh, no.
Somebody
What did
took
it look
it.
like?
It was just a navy blue woolen, soft wool sweater. If you looked closely, it was kind of ribbed.
wouldn't. Yeah.
It had ribbed cuffs, had a
Sounds beautiful.
round neck.
Yeah, silk piping maybe on the inside.
Yeah.
Wool? It was wool?
Yeah. Everything.
so- I love
why,
that sweater.
So why do we call your dad Bud?
So, here's what I can only tell you.
Okay.
In the 1940s, everybody was either Bud or Chip.
Oh, okay, that's good.
So he's Bud, I'm Buddy,
Yeah.
just,
But also his Uncle Kurt called him Buddy.
yeah. just-
And then Buddy, it's hard for us even as adults. I'm almost 70 and I still want to call him Buddy.
Everybody does.
But it's your
Well, my
name.
teammates
But
did,
his middle name is Curtis.
Yeah, I'm named
after
after
Uncle
Oh,
Kurt.
okay, great.
And now his new and first grandson,
Oh, congratulations.
his middle name is Curtis. And when his youngest son Travis is my godson, this makes me emotional.
Aww.
When Travis and Marta told me what his name was going to be, I happened to be with my dad,
Oh,
and I said to Marta, "Can I tell Dad?" And he said, she said, "Yeah, sure." Well, you should have seen his face when I told him that this baby's middle name was going to be Curtis. He was really touched.
He was really
And he
touched.
never called that baby anything but Hudson Curtis. As soon as you said Hudson, he would add the Curtis. Had to be Hudson Curtis.
Which, just like a quick aside by part, to my dad's generation, those men who served in France in World War I were like gods. And so his uncle was a god to him. His Uncle Curtis was a god to him, you know?
That's beautiful.
It
It is
is.
so beautiful. Now, you had a scarf here. Remember we had a scarf? that
Oh,
you wanted to take a look
the
at?
map.
The map.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the map.
The map.
This is
Okay,
a
good.
mystery. Like,
Now-
Oh, it is?
yeah, this goes along with what was in his dresser. Like the,
He gave this to me, I'm gonna say, somewhere around his 75th birthday. And we've had different stories about
Yeah.
how he got
And
it.
he passed away, he was 97.
Yeah, right.
Just a couple months ago?
Yeah, right.
April.
So I had 22 years to maybe get 3 versions of this, but I like the first one. Okay. In the war,
a whole medal.
our pilots were given these silk maps that were inside their flight jacket in case they had to bail out. And it's complete with navigation, wind charts.
Can you hold that up?
Yes,
Let's
I
look
can,
at it.
and it's still in really good shape. I've kept it in my map chest away from the light, because this is, so,
This is amazing.
his story is that he, after the surrender, he traded it with an Army Air Force guy, not a Navy guy, an Army Air
Yeah,
Force
Army
guy.
Air Force, cool.
Right, there we go.
Yeah, it's right on there.
And he said he traded a pair of like really good Navy boondockers boots for this. Now, I don't buy that,
that
but it's a
doesn't
good
make sense.
story and he's sticking
sticking with
to it,
it.
right?
Yeah.
And the other side, so.
Yeah, wait, let's turn
This
this
is
around.
amazing.
It is, and you feel
really-
that, you
I
feel
know,
how
it-
thin that is.
I mean, but to make this all on a.
Right, on the
It's
silk.
beautiful. It's beautiful.
Right,
East
Yes, it-
China Sea, it says at the bottom.
Yep,
Right.
Japan and South China
right, this
Sea on
is
this
where,
side.
this is, you know, where these pilots were flying every day. They covered,
amazing.
you know, hundreds if not thousands of miles.
Yeah.
Okay, let me read what it says here. I have to put my glasses on. Because
Okay.
it's really
We're
tiny.
gonna read here?
Well, here
You
at
want
the
me to-
bottom,
Oh.
it says, note, officers using this chart will mark hereon corrections and additions which come to their attention and mail direct to headquarters, Aeronautical Chart Service, Army Air Forces, Washington, D.C.
There you go.
Yeah, it's
So,
beautiful.
this definitely comes from World War II. I'm not sure exactly when Bud got it. I don't know if the Boondockers did the deal or not.
I would write some Providence on this.
Yeah, I
You-
would
you
write to
really,
get some
really-
Providence.
Yeah, just so you have it and documented, that's
Now-
beautiful.
It was soon after this, I believe, and Don, it might be in his diary, I don't know, but probably, maybe the last thing that I would want to mention in terms of Bud's World War II career is the famous Halsey's Typhoon, which was, Halsey had the fleet after the surrender, and we were sailing back home, and I may get some of the dates slightly wrong here, but Halsey was that's Admiral of the fleet was Admiral Halsey, and he took his fleet through a typhoon is what we call a hurricane in the Pacific, and he took the entire fleet through, and it's like a historical mistake that now is studied by captains. He had a chance to go around it or wait or delay or take some alternate course, and the number of ships that were capsized as a result and damaged, and you'll see these great movies of the typhoon. The waves were so big that it smashed aircraft carrier decks off. Like the waves came in and smashed the deck right down and off, and planes were swept in and sailors were lost. The smallest ships, like the Walk's a 300-foot ship with a 45-foot beam, and in the open sea, it looks like a rowboat. And they had to climb up these 100-foot waves and sail down the other, and at some point, they start to run out of fuel. Like they can't stay facing the waves, and there's no way to take fuel on board. And so some of them get sideways to these enormous waves and they get rolled over, they get turtled, they get rolled right over, and everyone, now everyone's spilled into the sea and swimming for their lives. So Bud's ship went through that kind of experience. And I don't know if he mentions it in here, but I brought it up many, many years later, talking to my dad about going on a cruise. And he wouldn't go on a cruise with us.
No.
He would not go on a cruise with us, and refused. And I'm not getting on a ship, and whatever, right? And so.
And this is from this experience.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I say to my dad, I think he was turning 70. He was turning 70, and he and Mom had been married like 45 years at that point, and it was our 25th anniversary. And we're going to go to Bermuda in a ship that's bigger than any ship that was in his fleet, right? And I go, Dad, this is what I say to him. We're sitting this far apart. I go, this is my guess. Somewhere in the middle of Halsey's typhoon, when your ship is climbing up one wave and down the other, and everybody's hanging on for their dear life, you said to yourself, if I ever get off this effing ship, I'm never getting on another one. And the look on his face was, but I understand, I'm a trial lawyer. I can read like what's going on, right? The look on his face was, I nailed it. Bam, I nailed it. And I go, guess what, Bud? It's 70 years, you're 70 years old, the statute of limitations has expired. You can get on this ship. And he and Mom did. And the most amazing thing happened on that ship. They had a tour of the bridge, and everyone could get on the bridge. And I could, come on, Dad, we're going to do the tour of the bridge. And I walk in with my dad. I'm behind my dad. We're in line. They have the velvet, things here, so you can't we're in line. And we walk in, Chrissy, like this. And my dad stands like this. at the helm, like this. And the officer, like this far away, goes, you were in the Navy. And he goes, U.S. Navy destroyers. And he goes, you were in the real Navy. And he lifts up the velvet guard thing and says, come on back. We're going to take you back here. And he meets the captain and other officers in the communication center. And, they still do Morse code.
Yeah.
But he met all that.
Oh, what an honor.
I was blown away by that.
Oh, that is so.
Just knew the way he was standing.
Yeah, he knew. He could tell. You can always tell the Navy man. Does he say anything in there?
Well,
Donna?
I was just reading about the Iwo Jima. He said it makes you feel insignificant.
Right.
It is amazing how anyone came out alive.
Mm-hmm.
Smashed ships all over the place.
Right, he
Now
was
they're-
not
yeah,
at
they're-
Iwo Jima.
Yeah,
They
they're
stopped there on
delivering
the way.
mail and Piccadilly and all this, but I just did read, took on fuel, where did I see that? He said he was in a typhoon.
Because it said rough storms over here. Seas and
Seas are rough, storms all around, Japan signed, which is supposed to end this war. We still change powder and blackout at night.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if there will ever be another war. If so, I don't think I will ever come in this outfit again. You don't or won't have much of a chance. I received one letter from home, the first from home since Iwo Jima. I just read that. He was in a typhoon. All right, keep talking and I'll try to find it.
Well, let's see, okay. you can-
Yokosuka. It was
you can
after
find it.
Yokosuka,
That's kind of my
right?
last story though, Chrissy,
I
that I
have
wanted
a
to make
couple other
sure.
things in here that we could show that
Okay.
you guys bought. Let's take a look and see what we have here. While Donna's taking a look here. Oh, okay. This is later on. Okay,
All right, let me see what we got here. Okay, this is really important to my dad. This is his diploma from Westchester State University, right? I don't know if we'll put up here. I'll put it in a way that we can see it. And I believe it's 1950, it is. So a very important thing happened to American servicemen after the war, and that was the establishment of the GI Bill, okay? And my dad, who was never going to go to college, not only went to college, but got his master's from Temple.
God
And-
bless him.
Right,
That's
got his
beautiful.
master's from Temple, and I think they financed our first two houses, because, it's an unbelievable thing. So, flash forward to 2010 or 12 or so, And Rutgers University, where my dad retired from, was doing an oral history on servicemen from New Jersey or people with a New Jersey or Rutgers connection. And my dad goes and meets this professor, and they do a 4-hour interview. And the professor wants to know about how my dad used the GI Bill. And my dad was a little confused about, like, why are we talking about
Right,
like
right.
this, right? I said, Dad, you got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from the GI Bill and bought 2 houses. And from that college experience, of your 7 children, 5 have college degrees, 3 have master's degrees, and there's 2 doctorates. That's what that guy wanted to know.
Wow, that is so beautiful.
Right, where did it lead to?
And what was your dad's degrees in?
His undergraduate degree was teaching social studies, K through 12. And then he got his master's degree because he was teaching in the teacher study programs at Bloomsburg State University and at Kutztown State University, where he coached, and he was teaching history. So his master's is from Temple in history, and his thesis was on the Lewis and Clark expedition. Right.
Oh, that's
He
beautiful.
actually had
History.
Lewis and Clark's diaries in his hands.
He
Yes, the
did.
actual ones, because this professor goes, you have to go, I don't know where they were kept at Penn, but my dad had them in his hands so that he could write his thesis.
Amazing.
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, that
Yeah.
is amazing
Right.
to do that.
So he's a real history guy, not a buff. He's a history professor, and I think to our benefit, he realized he was a part of history
Oh,
and
absolutely.
and was able to like
Well,
frame it.
The beauty of him writing
I know.
everything in a diary, that is something that, like I said, you both know the history of your dad, and he talked about this.
Yeah.
But the fact that you could sit here and honor him in his memoirs and everything that he talked about is just, it's priceless.
My reaction when I read his diary, this is honest, because my reaction when I read his diary went, Jesus, he was 18 years old and he was this articulate.
Can you
He
imagine?
was just
that?
thoughtful, because I know I was.
Yeah.
But
I'm going,
I mean, he throws these statements out, and when you think like what's happening in our world today, we're 2022, and we're still experiencing people killing each other, wars.
But if you don't change history, history's
Yeah.
gonna always repeat itself.
Like, he said, he's talking about how he ran into one of the guys from York, and he said, these are the things that I really miss. Just sitting around our bull sessions, just hanging out. I wonder if this will ever happen again.
But it's nice because I like the phrases that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's like watching an old movie.
It is.
You know,
So-
or something that from another time, and it's so beautiful that he wrote
Yeah.
all that, and it's all in your history. And you have, his discharge, I believe here.
Yeah, we have his discharge, and we have, Donna has, like, I want to say a shadow box, but Donna
Of the
has,
medals.
some medals, the campaign medals, and the
Our niece
battle.
Katie actually did this for my dad.
Oh, she did.
Yeah,
That's my
Christmas
sister.
present.
My
Yeah.
sister Jamie's daughter, who is
Yeah.
also a Westchester guy.
Yeah.
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 So I think if there isn't any more, or if there's anything else you want to talk about his service, we can talk a little bit more about what your dad did after he left the service.
Well, if it's all right, I'll read the end of his journal.
Yes, please.
Okay, so they get sent to Seattle, and from Seattle, they go to Grays Harbor
And where is that?
in Washington, the state of Washington.
Okay.
And he really liked Grays Harbor, and how nice everybody was to them, and all the girls were so nice. They went to a dance, right? I can't find the page right now, but he does say, he's hoping that they can stay in Grays Harbor a little bit longer. So now it's November 1st. He does say that he really wishes that they didn't have to leave. Then they got to San Pedro. Fellows say liberty's no good. Half of San Pedro was run over by the 3rd Fleet. Plenty here, leaving on the 5th for Diego. And I don't understand this, and I wish I had read more about this as I was growing up, but he wrote a letter home that Grandpa put in the York Dispatch, and it really angered my father. And he wrote home and asked them why they did it, and they wrote back, and now he says, 2 letters explaining why they put my letter in the paper, still pissed off.
Oh, boy.
So I don't know what the letter said,
So you have
but
a
it
copy of the
really
letter.
This is news
annoyed
to
him.
me.
Yeah.
I would have told him mellow out.
It really annoyed him. I wish I knew more about that. All right, then he went ashore last night, got some socks, a haircut, and saw a movie. Very
That's all
quiet.
important, yeah.
Yep.
That's
It is.
Very
That
quiet.
could be when he did the deal for the mat, too. Who knows?
Yeah. One day he writes, that he had ice cream. For the first time in how long?
How long, yeah.
Very tired of the Navy. Good football games today. And that was the end of the journal. But then my dad wrote this. And I don't know where the poem comes from. I'm sitting here and thinking of the days I left behind, and I think I'll put on paper what is running through my mind. People on the outside think a sailor's life is swell, but I'll let you in on something. A sailor's life is hell. A sailor has one consolation, though. Gather close and I will tell. When I die, I'll go to heaven because I've done my stretch in hell.
Right.
I've scrubbed 1,000,000 bulkheads and I've chipped 10 miles of paint. A meaner place this side of hell, I'll swear to you there ain't. I've stood for endless hours just waiting for my mail, and I've stood 1,000,000 watches and been in every special detail. I've shined 1,000,000 miles of brass, and I've scrubbed my dirty duds. I've swung 1,000,000 hammocks and I've peeled 1,000,000 spuds. I've cruised 1,000 miles and I've made 1,000 ports. I've spent the night in duty jail for trying to be a sport. But when those final taps are sounded and I lay aside life's cares, I'll take my final shore leave right up those golden stairs. 'Tis then St. Peter will greet me, and loudly he will yell, "Take your front seat in heaven, sailor, 'cause you've done your hitching it."
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow. I wonder if he wrote that.
No, that's like a famous poem. Yeah, we could
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
today we could Google that and find out,
But how cool that he, as a young man, that he wrote that down in his
Right.
journal.
Yeah.
And the journal was really tiny. And did I mention the other book while we've been talking? All right, so in his top drawer, he had this little journal and this other small book that was in Japanese. And he never knew what it was until 1980. When I was in grad school, I had a terrific friend named Keiko Yazawa, who was from Japan, and spoke 5 languages fluently. She was just amazing. And I brought her home one weekend. And of course, she and my dad were talking about the war. And he went up and got this book and he showed it to her. And he never knew what it was. It was a Japanese-English dictionary.
It's beautiful. Wow.
And the soldiers, they would have them on their bodies in case they got captured. They could communicate somehow. So he had that little book all those years. I have no idea where
One
it
of
is
the
now.
other things he had in his drawer for the longest time that got lost, like in the last move or something, he had the wing tip of the plane
Yeah.
that hit the walk.
How he got that, I have no idea.
There was probably pieces all over the place because the plane stayed on the ship, and I can remember him telling me this too. He goes, when they put out all the fires and they got all the sick and the dead, down into and got the ship like squared away, they looked in at the plane, and he said to me, he goes, that pilot could have been 16 years old.
Wow.
That kamikaze pilot could have
Wow.
been 16 years
Oh my
old.
gosh.
Right.
So where is that piece of the plane now?
Good question.
Nobody knows? Oh,
No.
missing. Oh, how large is it? Did
Oh,
you-
no, it was not big, so you could
It
see where it'd be
wasn't big?
easy to lose,
So it was
maybe
a small
like
piece of
that. It was he said, the very tip of the wing, and I don't know if it was, the main wing or what they call the horizontal stabilizer in the back. It's what lets the plane go up and down, you know. So, but I held it in my hands. It was silver, it was shiny, it was light. These were one-way trips for these guys. They loaded up just enough fuel for them to make the fleet, and then they had to dive on an American ship. So I feel like we covered it.
Yeah.
I feel like we covered it.
That's good.
So,
But now, do you want to talk a little bit about what your dad did after?
Sure.
yeah, we can give you the Reader's Digest version, but okay.
I mean, Alfie went to Westchester, and then many years later was inducted into the Westchester Hall of Fame, you know, for football. And he studied history and moved around. I mean, I was born in Bridgeport, well, Norristown, Pennsylvania, because my mom was across the river from Bridgeport, lived there for a while. And then we moved to Delaware.
See, he coached at that, when you were born, he was
Yeah.
coaching football and teaching at Downingtown High School. And then he went to E.I. DuPont, which is in Wilmington, Delaware, where my sister Jane and I were born. And he coached and taught social studies there. And then he got his big break. From there, he got hired at Bloomsburg State University as an assistant coach and as an assistant professor of social studies. And he began his college coaching career. And that's where my sister Christy was born.
Yeah.
When we were in Bloomsburg.
In Bloomsburg. And my godfather, Uncle Walter, who my dad met at Westchester. You know, they were both on the GI Bill. And in fact, my dad lived with Uncle Walter and his wife, who was my godmother, for a while. He used to tell us funny stories about things that happened there. Then he wound up at Bloomsburg, and Uncle Walter was the head coach. You know, my dad was there and teaching history, and
Right. And then,
that was only 2 years.
it's only 2 years.
I was in
because
first grade and second grade
He
there.
but from Bloomsburg, he became the head coach at Kutztown State University. And we moved to these are all Pennsylvania, you know, small colleges, but not so small now. I think Kutztown's like 10,000, Bloomsburg's like 12,000 maybe. And so we moved to Kutztown and lived in Kutztown for a bit till they took down our house and moved to Fleetwood, Pennsylvania.
The house we lived in was 3 or 4 stories high, and it was an infirmary during the Civil War.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
And when
wow.
we lived in it, it was condemned. But we lived in it for a while, and you know, upstairs the rooms had numbers.
Oh.
You know, it was like a hospital.
It was on campus.
Yeah,
It was right
yeah,
on
yeah.
campus.
And number 10 was like the storeroom. You know, my mom used to say, "Oh, go up to number 10 and
Right.
get whatever."
13 was the guest room. You know, so, yeah, that was like a TV show actually, because I think there was only 4 of us at that time, but Jamie and Mary came quickly while we were living in Fleetwood. And my dad continued to coach and teach, and he was also the swim coach there as well.
And he was dean. Was he dean? of
Assistant
men?
dean of men.
Yeah,
You know,
assistant dean of men.
A very good person for higher education, like wonderful for young men and women to be around because of his temperament and his experiences and his outlook, you know. But in 1966, he was hired by Rutgers University as a football coach. We all moved to Spotswood, New Jersey, where my dad remained and my mom remained until 2008, I
or 9,
think.
10.
And my dad was at the university full-time as first as a football coach and then as the associate athletic director in 1970. And the rest of his career was very much involved at the highest level of collegiate athletics as the associate AD at Rutgers. He helped usher in Title IX in women's sports at Rutgers. And even after he retired, he stayed on as the shot clock operator, the scoreboard operator for men's and women's basketball, and the spotter at the football game. So he always had these passes and tickets on him, you know, to get into everything, hey bud, you know, that kind of thing. And the police all knew him, and, you know, he'd get waved in. And
That's beautiful.
so,
And you know, I was teaching in East Brunswick, and I was living in Edison. So school would end, and I'd be going down Ryder's Lane to get home. and Dad'd be coming from Rutgers, and we would pass.
Yeah.
Like almost
Aw,
every
each
weeknight,
other.
I'd see his
Right.
little Honda come in, and we would honk
Right.
at each other.
But he had a tremendous career at Rutgers
Amazing. Yeah,
University.
amazing. And here's a
And-
picture of Dad. Here it is. We go.
Okay, so when Bud retired, he's so well loved at Rutgers. When he retired, the athletic division gave him for life 2 football tickets and 4 basketball tickets for life, which he
life.
disseminated to his 7 children, right? Well, after Bud died, they eventually it was easier for them to put that on my account because I was working for the university. Instead of mailing them to Dad, they put it on my account. But they were all Bud Heilman tickets, right? After he died, this is just 2 months ago, I call up the ticket office. I go, I'm sad to report, but, it's football, it's time, the tickets, but my dad passed 2 weeks. He goes, the ticket, without hesitating, he goes, those tickets are still Bud Heilman's.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
And he goes,
That
those
is
tickets
so
are
nice.
we'll deal with it next year.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
so sweet.
Yeah,
So my mom had 2 strokes, 2 years apart, and then my sisters in Pennsylvania convinced my dad to move back to Pennsylvania. That, there'd be more sisters that were close by that could help Mom. So back they go. Now they're in Wyomissing, which is only 25 minutes from Kutztown.
Right, that's right.
And my sister Jane was working at a place called Talbot's, I think. And one day this woman came in, and they're chatting, and Jane said, well, what do you do? And she said she was the department chairperson of the history department at Kutztown. So Jane said, oh, my dad used to teach history at Kutztown and was the head coach there in the 60s. And this woman says, I'm sure that a couple of guys in my department played football in the 60s. Let me find
you
out.
know where this is heading. It's like one of these amazing Bud Heilman stories,
Yeah,
right?
so they exchange phone numbers. 2 days later, my dad gets a phone call. Hello? Coach! Yeah, who's this? It's Billy Morgan! Jesus Carminetti! He goes, what are you doing? He goes, I'm teaching history at Kutztown. Get out of here! Wait, there's somebody else that wants to say hi. Coach! Who's this? It was Sal, Dad's first quarterback, in 1960. Right, so Billy and Sal say, we want to take you up to breakfast. We'll meet at Gambino's or wherever they want, right? Well, my dad walks in. There's 8 guys. Coach!
Oh,
These are
that's
all
beautiful.
guys that played for my dad
Right.
at Kutztown. And as time went on, they developed what they called Breakfast with Coach, which was the first Thursday of every month. And it got to be, one time I was there were 35 men there.
Wow.
And anybody that came new for the first time had to stand up and say what their
Yeah,
important
Don and I had to
was.
stand up.
Yeah,
I thought it was a
explain who
joke.
we were.
I thought it was a go.
But the one thing that was incredible, without fail, every one of them was involved in athletics, coaching something, teaching something. And they all would say, your father was directly responsible for how I lived my life and what I did with my career.
I'm
It was
glad you asked this
overwhelming.
part because,
Yeah, it's important.
right, it's really important. I went to one of the breakfasts, and not only were they were all our babysitters. Those
Yeah.
guys. And their girlfriends. They're married to their girlfriends. They were our babysitters. They're like, your buddy. I went there. All his players were there. Their wives and girlfriends. The head football coach from Kutztown, the new athletic director, and the president of the university.
That's amazing.
I said to my
started to
dad,
have- yeah.
that doesn't happen for
No,
too many people,
no.
Dad.
Once a year, instead of going to Gambino's or whatever the restaurant, they would have it in the gym, not the gym, but the student
I know what
center
you mean.
at Rutgers,
Yeah.
at Kutztown.
Yeah.
And
And
the
they started,
new kids with scholarships, they would bring them in and introduce them to my dad, and
Yeah,
That's
they
nice.
started
Yeah.
a scholarship in his name.
Generation.
yeah, fantastic.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
still there, right?
Yeah.
They-
Scholarship.
all these,
Beautiful.
the newspapers one time, the Reading Eagle called the Kutztown team the Heilman Herd,
Wow.
and that's what the scholarship's name is.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is
Yeah,
so
it is.
nice.
Yeah.
What a beautiful tribute. to
As
his
far as I
father.
know, the Breakfast with Coach is still happening.
yeah.
You know,
guys should
now
go.
it's breakfast
Yeah, you
without
should go.
Coach, but, you know.
With Coach's
they-
kids.
Yeah, right. We'll
You know, they're
report back.
continuing
Okay.
the foundation and, you know,
Yeah.
some of the guys came, in fact, two of the guys, one of the breakfasts, I was there, two of the men that were there were Bloomsburg football players.
Wow.
So we had Bloomsburg, Kutztown, and they were trying to recruit a couple of Rutgers guys, you know, to come,
Amazing.
but it's just
There you go.
fantastic. Yeah,
But you know, the legacy lives on.
Yeah,
does.
That's what's so
absolutely.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is.
definitely.
Well, I'm so glad you guys came. I really appreciate you coming and talking about your father like this. I mean, he's an amazing man.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, and left an amazing legacy. And, you know, I'm sure he's in heaven looking at you guys and saying,
Yeah, St. Peter said, come on up here, Sam.
Take your seat.
Take the escalator, don't worry about the steps. The gates are open, here you go.
is there anything else you might want to add that we haven't covered?
No, except that I mentioned all my sisters where they were born. My sister Amy was born last when they lived in Spotswood. So they had all the states, he had all the states covered. Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
And you guys went to South River High School.
Right.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Me and my sister Jane and my sister Christy,
Christy.
and then the last three graduated. Jamie, Mary, and Amy graduated from Spotswood.
Spotswood.
Beautiful.
So if anybody's watching this, our 50th reunion is coming up,
Ours
2
is-
years delayed.
Ours is September 24th, I think.
Well, thank you so
Okay.
much. I really appreciate it. And thank you all very much for joining us once again for our veterans and their stories. And, you know, it's been an exciting day today, and we really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Okay, thanks,
Chrissy.
Chrissy.
And to everybody, God bless America.